Welcome to the Path Monk Presents podcast. My name is Sean Donnelly Lewis, and I'm really excited about our guest today. We have Randy Johnston. He's the Executive Vice President at K2 Enterprises. Randy, welcome to the show.
Sean, good day, and welcome to all your listeners as well.
So just tell us about K2 Enterprises. What do you guys do? Why do you do it?
Well, have been doing that for about 35 years. We've been teaching technology to accounting professionals in the US and Canada. So we have the privilege of seeing, in the pre-pandemic days, face-to-face, about 100,000 CPAs a year in hundreds of courses, about 1,600 loosely. And frankly, we do it because it helps fulfill my personal mission to help as many people get as much advantage from technology as they would like. So all these years, I've just been trying to teach people how to use technology better and better.
Very good. And so you said the clientele, you just touched on that for a second. How many clients do you guys have, or what would be, do you work with, how does your what you guys do work with big companies and small companies?
That's a wonderful question and hard to answer in our case because we deal with, again, accounting professionals in the US and Canada. About 40% of them come from public practice, meaning they do tax, audit, things like that. About 60% are in industry. Usually that means they have a title like CEO, CFO, VP of Finance, Controller, that type of thing. And the industries vary exactly to match the industries of the US and Canada. In other words, 15% are in healthcare and 14% in manufacturing and construction. You just name them all because the rule of thumb is if a business is above 5 million in size, there's a CPA on staff in the US and Canada. Well, because of that, though, we also deal with all sorts of sizes of companies, from sole practitioners or individuals all the way through the Fortune 500. I think I'm technically correct in saying I've had the CFO of every publicly held company in the world in our classes.
Wow. And how have you been able to expand the business? How have you been able to grow as a company?
You know, our rule of thumb, Sean, is pretty simple. We always try to do the leading to bleeding edge of technology. So every time there's something new, we teach that topic. But more importantly, we're practical about it. How do you use this technology for business and personal leverage? And we usually like to say, if you attend one of our courses, you'll get all your time back within the next month. So if you attend an 8-hour course with us, you better get 8 hours of additional productivity in the next 30 days, or I didn't get my job done. And because of that, we're often leading to bleeding edge. And I try to keep people away from the bleeding edge because that's an easy way to get cut. Right? But I like to put them on the leading edge because if you're not doing the leading edge, you don't get the technology advantage and leverage. So if you think about we'll do something simple like social media, but since you asked the question, could we in fact be, broadcast on social media? The answer is obviously yes. But I was on social media on all platforms on day one of each of their platforms. So the day Facebook became public and the day Twitter became public, and when not publicly held, but just started publishing as a live service, or LinkedIn, same way with Google for Google search. I did Google search on day one, and the first day Gmail that could be registered for a Gmail address, I did it there. So our rule of thumb is I usually am approached, Sean, by entrepreneurs who have a good idea and they want to build a product. And because I've been programming for over 50 years, I've written a lot of code personally, but I've also helped entrepreneurs figure out how to take a product from an idea to a live deliverable. And so that's been delightful. Gosh, I've met so many really, really smart people. And, I tell people I'm a simple guy from Kansas. I just try to help them out. Kansas in the middle of the United States, the state abbreviation is KS. That stands for keep it simple. That's what I try to do. But, we'll go after things. And, my rule of thumb is if I can help you with technology, that's what I'm going to do.
Very cool. So where does your website play in getting new people informed? And how does your website fit into your overall business?
Well, you will see the website is k2e.com, as in K2 Enterprises. We applied for that domain when domain names were first being approved, and it took about 6 weeks. There was this annoying ski company that got in front of me. Actually, they got in behind me, but because there was a 6 week window, they applied 3 weeks after I did, so they got K2, and our alternate was K2E as in enterprises. But off of K2E, you'll see that we have links to my Accounting Software World website and my CPA Firm Tech website and my Totally Paperless website. None of those sites sell or track anything with intent. They're for education purposes. But
Okay.
the idea is that the websites will, inform about all of these things technology wise. They tie to our YouTube channel and so forth. But the idea is we would love to have people take courses, whether they're paid for or free, doesn't really matter. Because again, our goal is to just keep moving things forward every step of the way.
Very good. And so obviously always continuing to look for improvement. You said on the leading edge or the bleeding edge. What would be those room for improvement where you're kind of almost at the bleeding edge of your website? What are some things where you think, you know what, this could be improved, or you would really like to see, something change in a good way?
Well, I can tell you for sure, we build these things early on, and my supporting sites right now, Accounting Software World and CPA Firm and Totally Paperless, they're all on a very dominant platform in the past called Joomla. The early websites were built manually and then maybe used something simple like Front Page. And then Joomla and Drupal and others became popular. Well, because of SEO right now, WordPress and video and so forth do better on that. So I'm going to go ahead and migrate all those sites to WordPress, which I'm not wild about, but that's what I'm going to do because I think that's better for the moment. But to your point and answer, we are going to do auto optimization of search engine optimization on the website because now we know the techniques to do that. And one of the key things that most businesses are making a mistake on is you can do automated digital marketing. And the problem is there's a lot of people trying to do that, but they don't know what they're doing, so they're doing it wrong,
Right.
or they're not doing it at all. They're still trying to do things the old way. So we have our new site, CPE Today, for example, is fully set up, optimized. We can simulcast to all of the social media channels at the same time when we're doing a podcast or a video cast, and most of ours are video casts, Sean. And beyond that, we have everything optimized, and we do have to go through and retune the algorithms based on when Google changes their algorithms or Facebook changes their algorithms and so forth. So it used to be a lot simpler than it is nowadays, but it's not awful. And so that's a long answer to your short question. We're changing the websites to optimize for the new algorithms. And a little bit of cobbler's son, we just let that go too long. Shouldn't have, but did, because, hey, there were bigger fish to fry, as we'd say in my part of the world.
Right. So a lot of people do educational things for professionals like you guys do. What would you say is an advantage, or what do you guys do particularly well
There,
opposed to other services?
there are 2 or 3 clear advantages in my
Okay.
mind. Number one, everything that we teach technology is how to leverage the technology in accounting. Okay, not generally, but in accounting. That's why public practice CPAs or accountancies, as they're known in some parts of the world, UK and Europe, for example, or professionals that are in businesses come to us because we can teach them how to do, let's say, pivot tables, which I'm a designer of, or Power BI or others in an optimal way for accounting. That's number one. Number two is we generally understand how the accounting professional thinks. So we position the technology to the way that they think. And because of that, our quality of education is exceptionally high. We don't mess around with this, that, or the other feature that frankly doesn't make any difference to an accounting professional. So if you take something very simple in Excel, the accounting format, which many people are now familiar with, I'm the designer of the accounting format, but I can remember the day in Redmond when I was sitting with a team of 12 programmers, explaining why the accounting format was important. And the programmers, I'm an old programmer too, are sitting around saying, that doesn't make any sense. But I love the way the manager from Microsoft at the end of the day said, we're paying this guy a lot of money for advice. He thinks we should do it. How long is it going to take you to write it? Oh, 5 or 6 hours. Well, don't you think we should listen to his advice and do that? But what I was trying to do was save accountants, not hundreds, not thousands, but without exaggeration, millions of hours. Just think about how many people use the accounting format today with never thinking about it.
Right.
And in my mind, that's part of what's the beauty of technology is. If you do it right, it becomes invisible. It becomes a lever and you don't even think about it. Like
Right.
right now, we're talking through a technology lever. You're probably not even thinking about the technology because it happens to be working.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Totally makes sense. That's great. So we kind of had this overview of what you guys do. Now I'd just like to ask a couple more structural questions. How is sales and marketing structured at the moment?
Yes, what we do for sales and marketing is a multi-channel approach. We use the word omni-channel, although that's a little old school. So we still do email. We still do some physical mail. We do social media promotions. We do article placements in lots of different publications. Um, and when you start thinking about that, we're really trying to push the lever in multiple different places. We do referral marketing as well. And so if you start saying all of these things could have an impact, we try to push on those buttons at the appropriate time. Now, the K2 business is cyclical because of the nature of tax seasons around the world, but it's also cyclical because of the we'll call it month-to-month pressures of an industry accountant, where the first half of the month it's busy, or the first part of the year it's busy. So we are cognizant to try to time things where it fits the cycles of the consumer of the information. We've also been pretty cognizant of the trend towards short and the trend towards video and the trend towards audio, like your podcast.
Right. Yeah. Great. Just to switch gears a little bit, I want to talk about you. What kind of content do you consume to continue to educate yourself and grow as a professional, as a person?
Thank you for that. Frankly, a lot, as it
Yeah.
turns out. And I pull it from multiple different directions, and I read a lot of what I'd consider in-depth interviews and reviews at great length. And, everybody says you should focus on one thing for a career, and I found that way too boring. So I've tried to keep myself current in lots of different industries, including healthcare, manufacturing, distribution. I can go through all that, but also lots of different facets of technology. So I do low-level things like operating systems or security feeds, as another example, or productivity feeds and so forth. So uh, I probably consume on the order of uh, 10 to 15 uh, email summaries per day from completely different sources, which is really good.
Hmm.
For further, it is quite normal. Sorry, I would have done this in advance, but I will actually continue to be very old school.
Yeah.
Reading kind of the latest things, where it's that KPI checklist from Bernie Smith, or this new thing on collaborative innovation by a guy named Bart Bartholomew. He's a former SR-71 spy plane Blackbird pilot for the Air Force, but he talks about how to collaborate in teams. And frankly, I get to interact with a lot of really, really smart people, and part of it is just listening to them. You
Yeah.
know, so uh, in any given day, it would be normal that I schedule meetings and interview people about what they do, and then I write on that as well. So in 2020, the pandemic year, I researched and interviewed for practice management, financial reporting, and tax, and I probably talked to 200 development teams.
Oh
Now
wow.
think about that. trying to get that done in a bloody year's time. You
Mm,
know, you have to put a lot of them together, but you just listen to the insights of how they're doing technology along the way. So, and then I think you always do a better job of learning things when you have to explain it to others. So, because of that, Sean, I've continued to write on the pace of about 6 to 8 columns per month.
okay.
And so you'll see if you search a little bit, I'm published in lots of different places, but I'm usually trying to summarize something I'm thinking about. So consume, 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 structure, make sure the structure's right, push it back out as a summary, and
Yeah.
hopefully come up with a new idea along the way. So, uh, you know, think of it like when you went to university. You know, think about how much you learned in a short period of time. A lot of people don't appreciate how much they're learning during their college and university experience. And then later they realize it was a time of high growth and high learning. I've tried to keep the continuous learning attribute for 50 plus years going. Okay. And if you think about, I have an attitude, I want to learn at least one new thing per day. So I schedule my days. So I'm going to learn at least one new thing I'd never thought about before. Well,
Wow.
by the time you're older than dirt like I am, if you take that on, you'll figure out you'll have learned a lot of stuff along the way too, Sean.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, like the idea of consuming, right? Like we use the term as well. What kind of content do you consume? And it's yeah, like the same logic actually here in Germany, what would be instead of calories written on the side of a drink or something like that, it says energy. Actually, that's the word that they use. So even just that kind of same thought process of continuing to take in energy and then not expend it, not using it, not trying different things, not writing, not reading, those sort of things. That Yeah, it seems like a logical conclusion. You consume things to actually do something. It's
Yeah,
very
if
good.
you're going to just consume things and not use it, using your analogy for food, you're just going to put on weight.
Right.
As opposed to if you exercise it and you know the outcome is you have to produce something of value, you have a completely different attitude about it. And if you think about, again, we're using technology in a way that benefits us the most, how are we going to consume technology to produce something that's superior? How
Yeah.
are we going to help others? How are we going to help our business? You know, again, I don't tell people how they should do things or what they should do. But if I can give them leverage to do more of whatever they think it is they want to do. Now, yeah, if they're going to go do bad things, you know, hack systems or commit crimes, I'm not going to help them. You know,
Right.
as soon as I figure out somebody's doing something that I consider illegal, I'll cut them off immediately. And I usually tell people I'm not the legal or moral judge. You know, morality, that's your call. Legality, I know what that is, but I'm not going to help you do things that I don't think benefit you, benefit others, benefit your business.
Yeah. Sounds great. We're slowly coming to the end of our interview, but before we end, I just want to jump into our rapid fire questions. Are
Yes,
you
sir.
ready for it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The tension is rising. I don't know if you feel it, but okay. You held up some books, but I'm going to jump in. What's the last book that you read?
It would be Bernie's book, KPI
KPI.
Checklist. Yeah, in fact, if you haven't read KPI Checklist and you think you're using KPIs right, don't bet on it until you read that book.
Check it out, everybody. KPI
And
checklists.
collaborative is next.
What's the single focus that your company is focused on at the moment? What's the single thing, excuse me?
uh, Producing new generation content.
If there were no boundaries in technology, what would be the one thing you'd want to have fixed for your company?
Uh, the waste that social media has become.
It's a very worthy, very honorable thing to take up. What's the last thing that kept you awake at night about your company?
Um, you know, I don't have many of those, so that's a harder one because I try to fix things as they go, so I don't have a lot of worries. Um, hmm, Much harder than I would have thought on that one. So I appreciate the question, Sean. Here's what it's going to be. Last thing that kept me awake was meeting a deadline for materials. And specifically, I'll give you, it was IBM Secure Score, which they were morphing. And I had to produce the course in January. And I wrote the materials, and I was worried about it. And when I got up, Microsoft had changed the interface overnight.
If you
Okay, that's a terrible answer. I should have given you a nice,
no,
good answer on
that's
your
all
rapid
right.
fire.
You know, it's honest, right? Like people will say, "Oh, I've just been so excited because we've been doing so much, and I can't sleep because I'm so excited." And I'm like, okay, well, if you're in marketing, usually you can name everything that's going wrong, and you forget everything that's going right. So, get back to
Yeah.
rapid fire. I'm going to keep us on. What's the one advice you would give yourself if you were to restart your company over?
Uh, get strong assistance to help you leverage yourself.
Okay, we give our guests the last word on the show. So yeah, whatever you want to say, if you want to sum up everything we talked about, or if you just want to say something that's on your heart, we give you the floor. The floor is yours.
Appreciated. You know, if you've listened to the podcast here to this point, I would suggest that you turn yourself into a continuous learner if you have not. You'll find that there's great personal value in that, that there's great value to your family, your business, and more. If you happen to be able to use any of our content from k2e.com or cpetoday.com, that would be great. But the key thing is make sure that you just keep that burning desire to learn something new. It'll make such a difference in your life.
Great, Randy. Thank you so much for being on the show. That was
Pleased to do it, Sean. Thank you.
yeah, it was Randy Johnston. Check him out, K2 Enterprises, k2e.com, and we'll see you guys next time.